pennies, just pennies, on a black canvas arranged into the face of Abraham Lincoln. And I asked the guy, I said, how much is that painting worth? He said, $600,000, sir. And I looked at the pennies that made up the painting, and I was like, that's like $300 worth of pennies. A light bulb went in my head. I realized the value of art. Some of the biggest wars and crimes and scandals in history were financed through the theft of art. Art is a powerful commodity. And artists, if you're good at it, should never behave as a commodity. That's a tough one. And then I gave up. I said, this is probably it. I accepted the fact that the career I thought I was gonna have was over, but I started to rediscover just my art for its own sake. I would go to comedy clubs, and I worked for way less money than I ever had, and I enjoyed it more than any of the work I ever did. It was probably the best work I'll ever do, because it was so honest. It was so sincere. There was no media, there was no studio, there was no scrutiny, just me and the crowds. And I did it night after night, and slowly but surely the crowds got bigger and bigger. And then suddenly people started to notice, and Polestar would say, Dave Chappelle has the tour of the year. And again, and then the year after that, and then the year after that. And then Lorne Michaels asked me to do Saturday Night Live. And it wasn't just like he asked me. He was courting me. I didn't even know it. He gave me this whole long speech. I was like, all right. And then I read some book about Lorne Michaels starting Saturday Night Live, and I read the speech that he gave Richard Pryor when he wanted him to host the show, and I said, holy shit, that's the same shit he said to me. And I did it. And that was an enormous amount of pressure. It had been 12 years since I had been on television, or since I had even talked to the media. And I remember I signed my Netflix contract on my way to my mark for the monologue. If you do live television, they count down every second. 30 seconds. Are you sure this contract is good? It's good, just sign the paper, it's good. 22 seconds. Oh, nigga, you better not be tricking me. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I walked out on that stage and I killed it. It was natural. It was nothing. It was easy work. Got an Emmy for that one, too. First Emmy I won. And when I walked on the stage, after being in the cold for so long, for the first time when I walked on the stage, I'm like, damn, nigga, I just made $60 million. That's what I thought to myself. It's been great ever since. Really, I could do these specials like Steph Curry. I'll be shooting from inside, outside, all night. It's been great ever since. A lot of my friends are athletes, and I never could understand what it would feel like to only have a limited amount of time to be great. You got 20 years to be the best, or 30 years to be the best. But when you do art, you could be great whenever the will decides that you're great. I feel very lucky for that. And I never forgot this school. I've always come back and checked in. One of my favorite honors was doing the commencement at Ellington. I can't even remember what year it is. I just remember they cheered for me when I came out. I wasn't a big star, but I was their star. And I felt like I was home. After I did Lorne Michaels, after I did Saturday Night Live, Lorne Michaels said something that I got to share with you. He goes, you went to Peggy Caford School, didn't you? That's what he said. And I said, I did. And he said, I want to say to Saturday Night Live, he goes, tell her I owe her money. You know, I never asked to have this theater named after me. Peggy asked me. She was ailing, and I went to her house to visit her. She said, I want you to put your name on the school. She said, it will help us raise money for the school. And to me, it was like, I felt like I'm a little young for that, and I'm still kind of using the name, you know what I mean? Let's see what I do with it first. You never know, you know. Like, imagine if OJ named his son OJ Jr. Oh, Dad. And around then, I was receiving the Mark Twain Prize, huge honor. And the next day, all the artists that came to honor me, the Bradley Coopers and Chris Tuckers and all these great people, came to Ellington, and they taught master classes for the students. And Peggy Cooper Capritz, as sick as she was, got out of her bed so she could be with her babies. She never left us. So I did it. Say, you know, whatever you want to do, however I can help, I'll do it. I got to tell you, if you quit a show like Chappelle's show, I don't know if you know what happens to you professionally, but I'll tell you what doesn't happen. They don't just say, well, good luck in your future endeavors. With that media, they beat me up. With their power, they tried to make me behave. It takes a strong person to stand out in the cold like that. And I swear to God, so much of the strength I got to do that, the inner warmth I got to do that, I learned in this school and from my friends who helped raise me. So why wouldn't I do anything I could to help my benefactor? And the last time I came back, after the closer, when the kids were mad at me, I gotta tell you, that was quite the day. All the kids were screaming and yelling. I remember I said to the kids, I go, well, okay, Washington, it's a high school. I said, you mean I would get out of Eastern? The school year was already in full swing, and Ellington has a policy that they don't let people just come in the middle of the year. But Linda Gravatt, who was the head of the theater department at the time, very graciously took a meeting with me and my mother, and I get emotional thinking about it. Anybody that went here, you remember what it was first like when you first walked through the door? And it was in the afternoon and everyone was in their arts classes and the girls had tutus on and everyone was weird and walking around the hallway like you weren't sure where anyone was supposed to be, and you could hear people practicing their horns and shit all through the hallways. There was art bouncing off the walls. The minute I walked through the door, there was a gallery of all these children's work, and these pictures were amazing. My first thought, when I walked through that door, I'm not good enough to be here, I'm sure. Miss Gravatt sat me down, she told me about the school, and you remember Miss Gravatt, she was very businesslike, but also very warm. She was intimidating, but palpably kind. She was a paradox of a human being. And she gave me a date for an audition. My mother said, okay, Dave, it's on you. Now, those of you who know me know that I didn't prepare for that audition. That audition was like a possession. It was just something that I was proud to have. But as the days got closer, I'm like, oh my God, I gotta get something together. I didn't even know how to do an audition. I'd never done it before. So I went, I said, what do I need? They said a monologue. So I looked up monologue. And I went to the library, the MLK library, this huge library, so I gotta find something, and I found a piece in one of those yellow script books. It was a monologue by Mark Twain called The Judge's Spirited Woman. I learned it in a night. You know, it was not hard for me to memorize things. The next day, it was a Saturday, I think, and I came to the school, and they auditioned what used to be this room, the original theater at Duke Ellington School of the Arts. And all the department heads sat in here, and the lights are in your eyes, and there's a bunch of kids who already go to the school who come on Saturday just to see who might be coming. And I talked to all these kids before I went in, and these kids were nothing like the kids at Easton. They were like them, but they were different. They were weird and funny and self-deprecating, things like this. And I remember I came out on stage and I did my audition, and it was like terrible. I froze up in the beginning. I started, and then I said, wait a minute, I'm messing up. Let me start again. And I was nervous, and I was scared. And in the middle of the audition, I'm in the middle of the monologue, one of the teachers, Fred Leach, he said, Fred Leach, he goes, okay, that's enough. I said, well, there's still a little more. He goes, no, that is enough, he said. And I can't tell you, like, I was crushed. Without saying his disapproval, I knew it stunk. And I was right. When I walked in here, I knew I wasn't good enough to go to this school. And I thought to myself, fuck this school, that's stupid anyway. In first-year theater, there's a question that they ask students from time to time, and it's a make-or-break question. And when you ask this question, you don't know. And the question is this. They say, why do you want to act? Now, if you say anything like, I want to be a star, you're not going to get in. I didn't know that. And I figured I already blew the audition, so I told him the truth. He said, why do you want to act? I don't. That's what I said. And they said, well, then why are you here? I said, because I want to be a comedian.
Here is a 25-minute commentary presented as a single flowing narrative. The video opens with a woman sitting on a simple wooden stool in what looks like an artist's studio. There are paintbrushes in a jar behind her, canvases stacked against the wall, the faint smell of turpentine that seems to linger even through the screen. She's perhaps in her late 40s, wearing a paint-splattered smock over a simple black dress, her hair cropped short and practical. Her hands are stained with ochre and ultramarine, the marks of someone who has been working. She looks directly at the camera, not with the polished ease of a performer, but with the focused intensity of someone who has something to say, and has spent a long time figuring out how to say it. She begins without preamble. I've been thinking about this phrase for weeks now. Don't behave as a commodity. Dave said it, and everyone heard it, but I don't think everyone understood it. Not really. They heard a warning. They heard a piece of advice. What I heard was a manifesto, a way of living, a way of surviving. She reaches off screen and picks up a small battered notebook, flipping through it briefly before setting it aside. The gesture suggests she's been preparing for this conversation, that these are not idle thoughts, but conclusions she has arrived at through long labor. I'm a painter, she says. That's relevant here. I've been painting for 30 years, and in that time I've learned something that Dave Chappelle knows in his bones. Something that every artist who lasts longer than a season has to learn. The world will try to turn you into a thing, a product, a brand, a predictable unit of output. And if you let it, if you behave as the commodity they want you to be, you will die. Not your body, your soul, the thing that made you worth anything in the first place. She stands up from the stool, moving to a canvas that sits on an easel behind her. It's unfinished, a swirl of blues and deep reds, something that might be a figure emerging from abstraction. She touches the edge of it gently, a habit, and then turns back to the camera. I want to tell you a story. Not about Dave, not directly, but about a woman I knew in art school. Her name was Marie. Marie was talented, more talented than anyone in our class. Her drawings had this quality, this weight. You looked at them and you felt something. Not cleverness, not technique, something real. And the professors saw it, the galleries saw it, and they all told her the same thing. Marie, you have something. Now let us show you how to sell it. She returns to the stool, sitting down with a sigh that carries years of observation. She listened. Of course she listened. She was 22. She had debt. She wanted to be seen. So she let them reshape her. They told her to paint smaller. Paintings sell better when they fit over a couch. They told her to use more pastels. Pastels sell. They told her to develop a signature style, something recognizable, something that could be identified from across a gallery. And she did. Within 2 years, Marie was selling. She was in group shows. She had a dealer. She was doing everything right. She pauses, and her face hardens. But she stopped being an artist. She became a commodity. A reliable producer of a certain kind of object that a certain kind of person wanted to buy. And the thing that made her special, that weight, that realness, it drained out of her work. You could watch it happen, painting by painting. At first, the real stuff was still there, underneath. But then it started to disappear. And by the time she was 30, she was successful and hollow. She had become exactly what the market wanted. And the market, as it always does, eventually got bored and moved on to the next thing. She leans forward, her voice dropping slightly, becoming more intimate. I saw Marie last year. She doesn't paint anymore. She designs logos for a marketing firm. She's good at it. She makes a steady income. And when I asked her why she stopped painting, she looked at me with this empty expression and said, I forgot what I wanted to say. She lets that hang in the air for a long moment. That's what Dave was talking about. That's what don't behave as a commodity means. It means protecting the thing inside you that knows what it wants to say. Even when everyone around you is offering you money, fame, security, in exchange for you becoming something predictable, something they can package and sell. The video begins to intersperse brief, silent clips. Dave Chappelle on stage in his early years, electric and raw. The announcement of his show. The famous image of him walking away. His return. She watches them as they play, but her focus remains on her own story. People forget what he walked away from. $50 million. A show that was the biggest thing in comedy. A cultural moment that he had created. And he walked away. Not because he was difficult. Not because he was crazy. Because he realized he was becoming a commodity. He realized that the people around him, the network, the executives, they didn't see him as an artist. They saw him as a machine that produced comedy. A valuable machine. But a machine nonetheless. And if he kept going, if he kept feeding that machine, he would wake up one day like Marie, successful, hollow, unable to remember what he wanted to say. She stands again, pacing now, her hands moving as she talks, the painter's hands, expressive and precise. You have to understand something about the world we live in. It doesn't hate artists. It loves artists. It loves us the way a farmer loves a cow that gives a lot of milk. It feeds us, shelters us, praises us, as long as we keep producing. And the moment we stop producing the thing they expect, the moment we change, the moment we follow our own instincts instead of the market, they turn on us. They call us difficult. They call us ungrateful. They say we've lost our talent. But what we've actually done is refuse to behave as a commodity. And that is the one thing the market cannot forgive. She stops pacing and faces the camera directly. I learned this the hard way. About 10 years ago, I was doing well. I had a gallery in Chelsea. I was selling regularly. I had collectors who bought everything I made. And I was miserable, because what I was making was not what I wanted to make. It was what they wanted. They wanted these large, abstract landscapes. Calm, meditative, something that looked good in a penthouse. And I painted them. I painted them well. But every time I finished one, I felt like I had lost something, like I had given away a piece of myself that I would never get back. She walks back to the easel, touching the unfinished canvas again. One day I was in my studio, and I had this moment. I had just finished a landscape. It was good, technically perfect. The colors were harmonious, the composition was balanced. And I looked at it, and I hated it. Not because it was bad, because it was a lie. It was what they wanted, not what I had to say. And I took a palette knife, and I cut it, right down the middle. Just ripped it open, and then I started painting again. Not what they wanted, what I wanted. She smiles, a small, fierce smile. The gallery dropped me. The collectors returned the work they had. I had to sell my car. I had to move to a smaller studio. For 2 years, I was essentially invisible. And I painted. I painted the things I had been afraid to paint. The messy things, the ugly things, the things that didn't fit over a couch. And slowly, a different kind of audience found me. Not the collectors who wanted decoration, but people who wanted something real. People who wanted to see the world the way I saw it. It's a conversation. She returns to the stool, her energy settling. That's what Dave did. He walked away from the $50 million. He disappeared for years. And when he came back, he wasn't a commodity anymore. He was an artist. He was making the work he wanted to make, on his terms, at his pace, saying what he wanted to say, and the work was better, deeper, stranger, more honest, because it came from a place that wasn't trying to please anyone. It came from the thing inside him that had something to say. She picks up the notebook again, flipping to a page and reading silently for a moment. You know, there's a line I wrote down once. I don't remember where it's from. The artist's job is to be a human being, not a brand. That's what Dave understands. He refuses to be a brand. He refuses to be predictable. He refuses to give you what you expect. And that makes people uncomfortable. Because we live in a world that demands predictability. We want our comedians to be funny in a certain way. We want our artists to produce work that looks like their other work. We want consistency, reliability. We want to know what we're getting before we pay for it. She shakes her head slowly. But that's not how art works. That's not how truth works. The person who made something great last year is not the same person who will make something great this year. They've changed. They've lived. They've seen things. And the work has to change too. If it doesn't, it's not art. It's manufacturing. She sets the notebook aside and folds her hands in her lap. I think about this all the time. Every morning I walk into my studio, and I have a choice. I can paint what I know will sell, or I can paint what I need to paint. And every morning, I have to make that choice again, because it's never settled. The pressure never goes away. There are always bills. There are always expectations. There is always the voice that says, just give them what they want. Just be reliable. Just behave. And every morning, I have to tell that voice to be quiet. Because the moment I start behaving as a commodity is the moment I stop being an artist. She looks directly at the camera, and for a moment she seems to be speaking not to an audience, but to a single person. That's what Dave was telling us. Not just comedians, not just artists, all of us. Don't behave as a commodity. Don't let the world turn you into a thing that can be bought and sold. Don't trade your soul for security, because the world will offer you that trade every day. It will offer you money, approval, safety, in exchange for you becoming predictable, in exchange for you saying what they want you to say, in exchange for you being the person they expect you to be. And the trade might seem reasonable. It might even seem generous, but it's a bad deal. It's always a bad deal. Because what you're giving away is the only thing that's actually yours. Your voice, your truth, the thing inside you that knows what it wants to say. She stands one last time, moving to the canvas, her back to the camera for a moment. When she turns around, her face is calm. I don't know Marie anymore. I haven't seen her in a year, but I think about her. I think about the paintings she made in school, the ones with weight, the ones that made you feel something. And I wonder what she would have made if she had refused, if she had said no to the galleries and the dealers, and the people who wanted to turn her into a product. I wonder what she would have become. I wonder what she would have said. She picks up a brush, a fine one, and dips it in a small pot of cobalt blue. I'm going to go back to work now. There's something I'm trying to say. I'm not sure I know what it is yet, but I'm going to keep painting until I find it. That's what artists do. That's what we all have to do if we want to stay human. We have to keep saying what we need to say, not what they want to hear, what we need to say, and we have to refuse every day to behave as a commodity. Because the moment we stop refusing is the moment we stop being ourselves. She turns to the canvas, her back to the camera, and begins to paint. The video holds on her for a long moment, the brush moving slowly, deliberately, the blue spreading across the red and ochre. And then, slowly, the screen fades to black. You sit in the silence. The room around you is quiet, and you think about the trades you've made, the times you've said what was expected, the times you've been predictable, the times you've behaved as a commodity. And you wonder what it would feel like to refuse, to say no, to paint what you need to paint, to speak what you need to speak, to be finally not a thing that can be bought and sold, but a person, a human being, an artist of your own life. The screen is dark, but somewhere, in a studio you'll never see, a woman with paint on her hands is working. And somewhere, on a stage in another city, a man with a microphone is refusing to be what anyone expects. And you, sitting in the dark, have to decide what you're going to do tomorrow, whether you're going to behave or whether you're going to be yourself.
And some comedian told me that if I want to be a good comedian, I need to learn